record on this computer. So it only comes to me. Well, hi and welcome. Thank you so much to both of you for joining me for this recorded interview on what was helpful for each of you in successfully getting into housing and keeping it. So as you know, I will be sharing the recording of this interview with the Lacey Community Work Group on Homelessness to help them in their learning process as they get ready to set some goals and begin exploring some possible strategies for Lacey. At this point, I want to turn my attention to the work group members. And work group members, this is really important to remember. This interview is intended for the work group and the city and Athena staff teams viewing only. It is not to be shared outside of our working group. Thank you in advance for respecting that. So with that understanding, I'd like to invite you each to introduce yourselves to the work group. Just say your name and a little hello, however you want to do that. And then state for the record that I have permission to record this interview and share it with the Lacey Community Work Group on Homelessness and the city and staff members that are supporting the work group. You can just say, you have my permission. You don't have to say all those other words. So with that, go ahead and I just open, you know what, David, your sound is on, so why don't you go ahead and say hello.
Okay, I'm David Higginbotham, and you do have my permission to record this.
Awesome.
How much more you need than that?
Sorry?
Okay. I don't know if you need much more than that.
Nope, that's perfect, perfect.
Okay.
And Nobley.
Hi, my name is Nobley Wright. I'm really happy to be here, and you have my permission to record this.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate just the generosity of both of you, your time, showing up, sharing your story. It's a really wonderful service in the community, and just want you to know up front that we have your gratitude. So now I'd like to do two things before we dive into the actual interview. First up, I want to acknowledge the death of a young man who was living unsheltered in Thurston County until recently, and who generously gave his time and energy to participate in one of the interviews that our street outreach partners did last fall. He wanted his interview to be anonymous, so I won't share his story here, but I do want to acknowledge the very seriousness of this work and the lives that are at stake as we go through this planning process to try and get this right for everybody involved in the Lacey community. So I've asked for permission from Noble Lee and David, thank you both, asked permission in advance to take 30 seconds in silent reflection on what such a loss of life means in the community and to each of us individually, and to encourage our work group members to do the same as they view the recording. So I'm going to turn my timer on here, and I'm just going to end, we'll sit in quiet silence, in silence for 30 seconds. Right. That was our timer. Thank you so much. Thank you, and bless his soul out there. All right. So now, also, just if you want to tell a little bit, are you living alone or with family or roommates, or just a little kind of orientation, and as well as what's something that you really enjoy and makes you happy in life, what makes you laugh, what breaks your heart. I'll probably come back to those. So if you want to just start with the kind of where you are with the housing situation, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, my name is Nobly. I'm 46 years old, and I lived in Olympia, Washington for 2.5 years, and I did a geographical to Albany, Oregon, in 2017. I have family around here. I have been in my own place for 10 and a half months with roommates. It was a very long struggle to get here, where I am now. And I'm anxious to like share that today and in hopes of helping somebody have a little less of a struggle than I did to get to where I am today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nobly.
And I have two roommates, and we have a 3-bedroom house. So that's a little bit about that part.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about when you're sitting around with your roommates or whoever in your life and you're laughing, what's something that really makes you laugh?
Well, I am the definitely the class clown. Through my life, it's sadly it started out as a defense mechanism because I was hurt a lot, and I figured if I could make whoever was around me laugh, then they wouldn't be hurting me. And so as I got out of those situations and my life started improving, I still had that, goofy mentality. So you know, I'm always laughing and joking and just being goofy. I like corny jokes. I just am a goofball, but I'm also very serious when I need to be serious. But I had to grow up way too fast. So even though I'm 46 and a half years old, I'm very much a big kid. So
I love it.
just anything goofy makes me laugh. Cheesy, corny shows, just silly jokes that most people would be like, "Oh my gosh." I think
You have one off the cuff, a super corny joke right now?
I don't know what this one's like rated PG, but what kind of cheese is my cheese?
What kind of cheese is my cheese?
Is my cheese
I don't know. What?
not Joe cheese?
All right.
Totally lame, but
I love it. Thank you for that.
that was a PG one.
I love it. Love it. Thank you. So, David, let's bring you into the conversation now. Same
Okay.
thing. Tell us a little bit about where you are and how long you've been there and where you're from.
Well, I think the hardest part for me was my upbringing with abuse in my family from my father. But that left me with addicted to drugs and alcohol for so long that eventually it started changing the whole atmosphere. So, and
Hey, David,
what led me to be homeless was
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Before you go too far into the story, will you just tell us a little bit about where you are? Where you live? You're living in Lacey now?
Okay. When I came back from Reading in 2009, it took me about 4 years to get signed up for Section 8 housing. In the time I waited to get on Section 8 housing, it took me over 8 years to get on the list. And it was a matter of weeks that I got into a place. And I've been here ever since. I live in Lacey. And so it's been a godsend to take and finally get what I've been looking for when I lived in Seattle. But they had 10-year waiting lists in Seattle.
Yeah, and we're gonna dig into that some more because I think that's a really important part of what I've heard from your story, and kind of talk about what those challenges were and also what was helpful. And before we do that, will you just tell us one thing? Tell us one thing that really makes you happy these days.
Well, I've been a music collector, movie collector and stuff like that for a long time. When you when you're disabled and you can't move around very well, you need to figure out a hobby that's, bring you enjoyment. And so I've been collecting music and movies and stuff for years, and that's just been a hobby. And what really brings me joy is have been collecting these landscape pictures for years, for probably 40 years. And then I found that they put stuff on Facebook and Instagram, and so I'm seeing all these pictures from all over the world, and they just peace when I look at that. When I look at those pictures, and it's a hobby. It's been a hobby for a long time, but it's so much better with social media. You see these just gorgeous pictures, and so that's what I get enjoyment.
Awesome, I love that. Awesome. Is there anybody's pictures that you particularly like, or is it just or particular areas that you like?
Areas that really fascinate me are countries like New Zealand, Norway. They have just got some gorgeous areas. In New Zealand was just just beautiful areas over there, and Ireland too. Ireland is really green.
Nothing like beauty to make you feel human, huh?
Yeah. So I get a lot. I look at that as God's masterpiece, and he's got numerous masterpieces, and so I look at that from the spiritual side of it too. And so that's it. I get comments all the time. Oh, love what you're post those pictures, but it's I don't do it for them. I do it just as for me. So it's not necessarily a social thing.
Mm-hmm. So thank you for all of that. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm thinking since we're going to alternate who goes first on questions, I'd like to kind of just take you straight into the next set of questions where I'd like to ask you to just tell us a little bit, kind of going back to that first time you lost housing. You went from a place you thought you had a comfortable roof, maybe thought you had a comfortable roof over your head, and then you weren't. What was happening? What made it difficult to stay? Were there, how long ago was that? Just tell us a little bit about that situation.
Oh, well, this is 98 leading into 99, and I was in between hip surgeries and foot surgeries kind of at the same time. So I had one foot operated on and I had my hip operated on. So I was staying in a duplex, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, the owner says, "We're going to sell the duplexes," and barely had 3 weeks notice, and I needed a lot more time than that to find a place because I was barely making it, and they didn't care whether there was going to put anybody out on the street. They just wanted to sell it, and that first time was terrifying. That first night in DESC downtown Seattle, that first night was terrifying. Just going and having all these people around me and not knowing. I was afraid. I didn't know what side to sleep on because, it's the reality of shelters is there's stuff that happens in shelters that shouldn't happen, and it's a lot of suspicious behavior, but that's what led me to be homeless. And I was homeless in Seattle from 99 until off and on until 2009.
Okay.
Twice in Seattle and once in Redding.
So when you say the first time, and you're talking about twice in Seattle and once in Redding, so there were times in between in that 10-year span where you were able to get into housing, but not sustained.
It was termed as affordable housing, which I think was hilarious. Just like affordable health care. That president just went out of his way to create these things, and so it just went okay. So it's hard, and I got off the streets, I got in a place, but then I did the dope and the alcohol kept coming back, and I'd be dabbling with that, and it would keep coming back and caused me to get evicted out of another place and back out on the streets and spend another couple of years out on the streets, and then I just said, well, it couldn't get any worse than it is in Seattle. Redding couldn't get any worse. And I got down there and I'm going, how hot is it? How high is it? About 100? And it was like 110, 115. And I said, "So like this all the time?" So, yeah, get into my research. So I went down there, and within a year of me having a place to stay down there, I was out on the streets in Reading and literally living borderline heat stroke every day. So your environment around you can really change, can really make a big difference on how long you stay on the streets,
Sure.
what you can kind of help you can get.
Can I ask a follow-up? I'm curious. You mentioned alcohol, and I think I heard you mention drugs during that 10-year period. I'm curious if that was an issue for you before.
Oh yeah.
If what's that?
First went into treatment. I don't know if you remember carrying hospitals. They were in Seattle. Had one in Aberdeen, and I went to first time in '88, and I went 13 years without relapsing, and then I relapsed, and the next 10 years after that were just back and forth, and it caused me to lose places, caused me to be put out on the streets. My bad choices. I'm real blessed with one, with family, two, that they they were glad when I came back home. It was a few years that was very hard for my family. So.
I bet. All right. Well, I appreciate you helping with that context. It sounds like the first time you lost your housing, though, it was completely separate, not connected to that. You were.
No, I mean, I was doing.
They sold the house, for goodness sake.
I was doing drugs when I lived there. Well, I wasn't drinking. I was doing drugs when I lived there, but that just added to everything else that was going on.
Sure. I mean, the reality is all sorts of people who are living safely inside houses have drug and alcohol problems and never end up, losing their housing, right? Like me.
Yeah.
So I would just wanted to try to get a little clarity around that.
Yeah, it's been a long road to get back to where I wanted to achieve in 2009. So it took 11 years, about 8 or 9 years to take and make that happen. So I feel real blessed to.
Your story about losing your housing with because of the owner where you were renting, selling it. I just recently heard that that's an increasing issue. From the representative from the Lacey Veterans Hub said that has been a big deal for a lot of veterans he has been working with. So
yeah, it's I've never seen this. Yeah. I've seen it in Seattle, and you don't want to be homeless in Seattle. Trust me. That's
we'll talk
really
about
harsh.
The challenges in process and what things were helpful for you in just a moment. But right now, I'd like to bring Nobili back to share us a little bit as well about what happened. When was it that you first lost your housing? Tell us a little bit about your life around that time and what was it that caused that.
Well, through there's been times in my life where I lived in a tiny little camper on the back of a truck and things like that, couch surfed and whatnot. But what led me to absolute homelessness was I was married for 11 years and I tried to get pregnant and I could not get pregnant the whole time. And we didn't have money to, we were on Oregon Health Plan and they don't help you get pregnant, so we just, anyway, 2 months after my marriage ended, I got pregnant and I was being very badly abused. And so I'm Native American and I grew up on a reservation in Northern California. So I moved from this area up here I'm in now, from Corvallis, Oregon, back home to my reservation because I was pregnant and I wanted to get some of the native resources and be around my family. Well, because I was pregnant, they put me in tribal housing, and it was a little manufactured home that was 3 bedrooms and 1 bath, and it was brand new washer and dryer. Everything was brand new, and I had set up a really wonderful nursery, and my baby's father went to prison. for some of the things that he had done to me. And he ended up running to Nevada. So he was in prison in Wasco County, Nevada anyway. So I did really well through my pregnancy. I worked for the tribe, and I lived in the tribal housing, and things were going well for me now that he was out of the picture. Well, it was a high risk pregnancy for me, and a prenatal care it was 72 miles from the reservation to the hospital, so I didn't get the best prenatal care. My son passed away when he was 17 hours old, and my life went out of control. I did enough heroin to kill me. I tried to kill myself. I should have been dead. But my friend found me and gave me Narcan and saved my life. I locked myself in my son's nursery, and the tribe had to kick the door down 5 days later to get me out. I started talking to the father again, and he convinced me that I needed to change, that I needed to get away from the house and the reservation. Oh, I lost the house. I lost the house because I no longer had a child, and it was a family unit. And so I got kicked out, and so that they can give the house to somebody that had kids. I understood that. There's somebody that has kids that need my house. I left. The baby's dad convinced me. After he got out of being incarcerated, he hit I-5 and ended up in Washington State because he had so many warrants in California and in Oregon. He bypassed both of those and ended up in Washington State, in Olympia, Washington. And he begged me to come up there. He convinced me that he had a house for me to live in and a job. And I'll never forget, it was January 8th of 2015. It was pouring in Washington State, and I put everything I could fit on my back in a backpack, and I rode the Greyhound to Olympia, Washington. And then I got dropped off at the Greyhound there right by the shelter, and he showed up, and he was spun on dope, and there was no place for me to live, and there was no job. And I remember we slept on the library steps that night. And shortly after I got there, he started abusing me again and beating me. And I ran into somebody down there at one of the chow, either at Vinny's or Sally's, that told me about the homeless shelter there on 5th and Franklin. So I showed up there, and he showed up there as well. So we ended up getting a couple's bed, and he was choking me out in the shelter, and somebody saw. And anyway, I got a bed there for a little bit, but then I started using meth, and I found out how to get the meth there in Olympia, and I gave my bed up to basically to do the dope. And so about 19 days after I got there, the old man, he beat me up so badly that my face was, all my cheekbones were fractured and my eyes were beat shut. And so I showed up over at the shelter, and they gave me an emergency domestic violence bed. And I was afraid. I was afraid to be out on the street. I was afraid because you have to leave at 6 o'clock in the morning and not come back till 5 at night. I was afraid during those hours that I was going to be dead. So he finally got arrested for what he did to me in Washington State, and went to jail over there in Chehalis. And I battled back and forth with the shelter and the streets. I mean, I lived under the 4th Ave Bridge. I lived in the woods on the west side. I lived on Martin Way and them woods. I just lived all over Thurston County on the streets for the next 2 years.
So, Nobly, thank you so much for sharing that. It's obviously hard, and kind of.
I knew when you started telling yours that I was going to lose it, but
Yeah, we have more in common than I even knew. So So I appreciate you both sharing this kind of introduction to what you then experienced. And nobly, and again, in the spirit of continuing, if you're okay, do you want to continue? What I'd like to go into now is kind of talking about some, you already talked a little bit about some of the challenges you were facing while you were living on the street. And you wanting to go into a little bit about some of the, when you decided, if you decided, if that was any different trying to get housing, or kind of where that came in, where you're actually looking for a place to live, and trying to get to that, and any challenges that you faced. I'd like to kind of start there. If you're ready, if not, we can.
Yeah, no, I'm ready. So that went on for 2 years, and my addiction and my depression and everything just grew deeper and deeper. But I had developed a really great relationship with the ladies over there and the people over at Interfaith Work Shelter, and so I decided one day that I didn't want to be a junkie under the bridge anymore. That I wanted help. So I went in there and basically fell to my knees and said, "Help me, and I want to go to treatment." So they did everything they could to expedite me a bed into the Northwest Indian Treatment Center in Elma, Washington. And they accepted me, and I went to treatment. For 45 days, I came out and I was really good. I got into Aberdeen to an Oxford house there, and in 10 days, I got a hold of the ex. And I went back to Olympia. I got some drugs and went back into the woods in Martin Way. Anyway, long story short, I did that for about 10 days, and then something was telling me, go home to Oregon, just go to Oregon. And it was so strong that I went back to the homeless shelter and I said, please get me a bus ticket right now to Oregon. Mm-hmm. And so they did. And when I got here, I lived with my mom for a while, and then I moved into an Oxford house here. And then I got diagnosed with stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer. And so all throughout there, I was too sick to work, so I lived in recovery living. And then I tried to get a place of my own. I was ready, I thought, to get a place of my own. And the barriers that stood in my way was, for one, they want you to have, 2 or 3 times your income, which is not even remotely feasible. How are you going to come off the streets or come off of any place with no education and no help anywhere to come up with 3 times the amount of an overpriced place to rent in the first place?
Right.
Okay. So that was one of the struggles. The second struggle I found was nobody wanted to give me a job because I didn't really have a place to live. I didn't usually have a phone. I couldn't get a hold of me. It was hit and miss where I was going to be. So it was really hard to try to get a job where that would follow my couch surfing or wherever, would follow me around. And then I finally did get a job. They wanted me to make this astronomical amount of money. And then another thing that happened was, if you are going to rent a room in a house, even if it's somebody that you don't know, say you add it, you answer a Craigslist ad for a room to rent and you go to rent the room, well, those places want a deposit, sometimes of $400 to $500, just like a regular place would. The problem with that is if you go to, say, here it's called the Community Service Consortium, but if you go to a place that would normally help you with the first, last, and a deposit, and you ask for help, but you tell them you're moving into a room, they will not help you.
Oh.
They will not help with the deposit of a first and last of a room in a house. So most people, myself included, that are coming off the streets, they're not going to be able to move straight into an apartment. That stepping stone is going to be rent a room.
Yeah.
And then you don't have the money, even though in this day and age to rent a room is anywhere from $600 to $750 a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
they
if
want
you're lucky, right?
if you're lucky, and then they want a first and a last and a deposit a, and a income of a year at the same job and all of this just to get a room in somebody else's house.
Yeah. So how did you do it? I mean,
You
here
know
you
how
are,
I did
for the
it? You know what I did? I did the footwork. I went to every church. I went to every door. I went to any place that would listen to me. And I said, help me.
Mm,
And the only reason why, to be honest, to be 100% honest with you, that I got a lot of the help I got was because I was sick with cancer. If I wasn't, I don't think they would have helped me.
wow.
But because I was going through chemo, I had to go through chemo for 2 years. I went and begged the churches and they got me into the room. It was a room. And I lived there for 2.5 years and I paid my bills and I got a job and I got more recovery. And I just kept plugging away at it.
Awesome.
I just wouldn't stop. I knew what it felt like to be cold under the bridge. High or not high, I was
Yeah.
freezing. I had wet shoes. I was starving.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't going to let that go. I worked really hard,
Yeah.
but there was not a lot of resources there. And then if you're a felon,
Mhm.
on top of that, even though people can be rehabilitated, I was, but once you have any kind of label on yourself, they don't care. They don't care if you're better. They just know about what you did. So
Right.
then that's another door slammed in your face.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then just one more thing. If you've rented a place and anything happens, say your dog left a stain on the carpet or the too much hair in the drain or whatever, they want to make you out to be a bad tenant. And then you have that stacked against you on top of all the other barriers standing in your way of getting a place to live and keeping it.
Yeah. How did
So
you have the how did you have the will to keep asking for help? Did you have any support system? Were there particular um, organizations or individuals, even people, that were, out sleeping under the bridge with you, or what helped to do that?
well, I think I did have some help, from my family, but because of my addictions and stuff, my family just thought I was a big liar. And they didn't want to hear they didn't trust me. They didn't want me to live with them, and so even though I had some recovery in me, it wasn't enough to make up for the things that I'd done. So really, I think it was just I didn't want to be a statistic. I lost a lot of people out there on the streets in Olympia, and it broke my heart to leave them behind because I felt guilty. I felt guilty for living my street family because I was going to have a roof over my head, and that tore me up. But to be in all honesty, I just I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to show my street family and show the people I've met along the way that it can be done. And most importantly for my son.
Thank you.
Because when I needed to hear it, somebody told me that there's holes in the floor of heaven. And when he looks down, do you want him to see he's shooting dope under the bridge or, you know, rising above and getting over it and not over it, but getting through it. And that really hit home with me.
Yeah.
So
Motivation.
yeah. And
I've
so
talked
I
to
just,
myself about that too.
yeah, I just, and I guess that I couldn't go back there. I should have rightfully been dead. I put myself in a lot of risky situations and a lot of I rightfully shouldn't be here. And when I got out of there and got clean and some clarity, even though I was diagnosed with cancer, it's like if none of this has killed me yet, I got to do something different, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
anybody
you were committed. You were committed that
I was,
this was
and
the
anybody
future.
that would listen to me, I would talk and then they would say, "Oh, did you hear about this place?"
Yeah.
And our Albany partnership here, I don't know what that's like in Thurston County, but here they help you get on these waiting lists, and they're not nothing as long as Seattle and probably Olympia, but they are a couple years out. They're a couple years long, but they have several, you know, based on your income, places to live around here. Not several, but they will help you get on the list for all of them.
Awesome.
And
So is that what you're in now?
I am.
Okay, awesome. So I want to circle back and talk a little bit about that and, how that's going and how, you're maintaining, but I'd also like to bring David in so we can
Yeah,
kind of
definitely.
and give you a break. So David, you had 10 years and we've already heard a little bit of some of the challenges that you faced, but I wonder if you can go back and kind of identify some of the, really big challenges that you were working with, and then go into, what it was that helped you in particular. What helped you at the last stage that got you into where you are now, stable and all of that, stable housing?
Well, it's the whole situation that I was in, where I couldn't. I was in a lot of pain because in that 10-year period, I was also having foot surgeries and hip surgeries, and so I was constantly on opiates. And when I was out on the streets, I couldn't get comfortable. I was always in pain, and dealing with that was the hardest thing to deal with. Being on the streets, it's being so physically tired and in pain, and they won't let you come inside. You tell them you're physically disabled, and they still won't let you inside. That's in Seattle. That was my experience.
And when you say they won't let you inside, you mean during the day?
During the day, they sometimes. When I was down in Redding, they actually let me at the shelter I was staying with. They actually let me. I told them I was disabled. They let me come in and sleep during the day. Not all the day, but they would let me come inside because you got to remember it's over 100 degrees outside, and they would let me come inside and rest. And so they do that in Seattle, but they did that down in Redding, and I always thought I always thanked them for it, because it was a godsend to have a place to go during the day, and so I know that. But
did you
the
get
root problem was always the chemical dependency.
So let's talk about the chemical dependency in a minute, but before we go on to that, the physical disability, I mean, that I keep thinking about that, how you were having that surgery before you even went into this, and it sounds like, pretty close before, so you're not able to get around easily, and then the influence with the medication. We know that's a big issue with folks. I imagine that's part of it, but I'm curious if there were any if there was anything that helped you in addition to, you mentioned shelter letting you come in during the day out of the extreme heat. Was there other things that helped you with the physical disability issues?
Well, my experience in Redding compared to Seattle was they didn't have enough resources. And Redding just didn't have hardly any resources. And so you found a lot of people, living on the street, not necessarily in shelters. They only have so much room in shelters. And so, that was hard to deal with. It's part of the reason why I want to come back home. If it hadn't been for family, I would probably still be down there.
Say more about that. About your family.
Well, I tried.
So your family was a big help in helping you exit homelessness, or was it, they helped you along the way while you were struggling with that?
Well, they've been helping for so long. Eventually, my father just got to the point where he was just about ready to write me off, permanently. And so I got clean and sober, and he changed his tune, and and it's very proud of where I'm at right now.
Hmm.
And, but it was family, and not having family, living in a town where you don't know anybody. That's really hard. You're not being able to connect to family. And so I will call them, but it would just be very minimal. That's what brought me back.
Actually calling, reaching out to family and asking for help.
Well, I wasn't asking. I never asked my father for money when I was down there. I said, I need some money. And I never called him up and asked for money because I knew what the answer is going to be. Weeks in advance, I know what the answer is going to be. And so I didn't do that.
And what
No.
would the answer be?
It would always be no. He said, we will help you, but we're not going to give you money.
Yeah.
He was
And
concerned about,
is that because of because you were struggling with addiction too?
yeah, it was about, he knew. I remember the first time I told him I dropped acid, I could hear him squealing tires around 4 different intersections. He was really mad. And, and so he's always wanting me to be clean and sober. And it's the first time in my life I've got over 6 years clean and sober, and he repeatedly tells me how proud he is. And that makes me feel more blessed by having the support of family. And I finally got my act together after my birthday's in 2 days, so I will be 58. Yeah, I'll be 58 on Friday. So
awesome! Happy birthday and congratulations on so many years sober. Really, congratulations to us all. I have to say, I look around I don't know if you guys ever did any of the 12-step programs, but I did, and I would look around the rooms, and I still do, and it's like just some of the strongest, most incredible people I've ever met in my life, and probably will ever meet, is that, when that decision is made, and I'm just gonna do something, do something different, and it's just, it's kind of awesome. So congratulations.
And not to put you on the spot, and don't believe it, I've been in Olympia for 10 years, and when you first come on, you look familiar. I don't know from where, but you look familiar. So
Probably ran into.
that's why when you see people and you go, and I used to go CR in sober recovery, so as well as AA meetings too. So, but yeah, you look familiar when I first saw you. So
I have wondered if you guys would have crossed paths.
I'm sure.
Just a familiar face.
Yeah.
That's great. So
I
did go into meetings and stuff. You meet a lot of people in a lot of different rooms too. So yeah.
So I twirled a bamboo stick all through town, and I ended up beating the crap out of this kid in Sylvester Park with it because he told me to shut up, that he was trying to sleep, and I pulled it out of my back and just whoa. So after that, they kind of called me the crazy chick.
Was it one long piece?
Huh?
Was it one long piece?
Yeah, it was like
one long stick.
The Japanese gardens. You go get a big piece of bamboo.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I see. I see.
I seem like I remember someone walking around the street with a long stick or bamboo stick. I don't know if she's whipping it on anybody, but I've seen someone walking with a long bamboo stick. I thought it was rare to see that. So
that probably could have been me because I was known for it.
I'm glad I didn't come in distance.
It kept me safe, though. It kept me safe, and the OPD, Olympia Police Department, would pull me over a few times, and I told them that this is kind of silly, but I told them before I got addicted to meth, I was a baton twirler, and I don't want to lose my twirling ability, and so they would allow me to twirl all around town with it. I'd see them and I'd start twirling, but it kept me safe. It really did.
I bet.
Maybe I got you a tip.
And I imagine, imagine actually having, being a woman as well as being, a person of any gender having a physical disability. Both of those really compromise your safety. Um,
Can I just make just a point about what I experienced in Seattle?
yes, please.
When I was homeless in Seattle, I could never find resources for myself because I'm a single man with no kids. And the first people that would help out would be single mothers.
Mm.
But even then, you're dealing with a lot larger numbers, but even then, there wasn't enough for them. But those were the first people that were usually helped. And usually the single man was usually one of the last people. But because I have a disability, I was able to not be quite at the bottom of the list. But I tell them what it is, and they acknowledge that.
Yeah.
There
Well,
was
that's
several times that I showed up at the shelter to get a bed, and there was only so many beds, and there were so many people, so you would have to put your name in a hat to get a bed.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
a lot of times, my name would get drawn out of the hat, and then I would look out at the people standing under that cover looking to get a bed, and I would find somebody that was 67 years old, and it was wintertime, and not like 9 out of 10 times I would give up my bed because I knew I was either super high, I wasn't going to sleep, or B, I could, I would give up my bed. And that was also another point in my mind where I was like, this is so sad. Like, people think that because you're on the streets, you're on drugs and you choose to be there. These are senior citizens that have put their time in and done their time, and they're sleeping outside on the street.
Mhm.
Those are the most heartbreaking.
That
The ones that are,
every time I gave my bed up, even to this one older lady I couldn't stand, I would give her my bed. And the next day I would see her and I still couldn't stand her. But in my heart, I knew that crazy Dee Dee slept in a bed that night because of me.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of looking out for, people most in need. And yeah, it's nothing like being able to see when somebody really needs help when you're in that place yourself. David, can you tell us a little bit more about like what actually was helpful for you? Where was the turn? And we heard Noble Lee talking about there was a decision for her, and some really strong will to pursue and keep hounding for help. What and then I also don't want to dismiss the success that she actually got with the church, and I want to come back to that a little bit. But for you, David, what was it that was helpful for you? What and it might be a bunch of things, but can you just lay that out for us?
well, the most recent is 2009 when I was trying to come back from Reading, and I called. I made a decision that I told my father. I said, I'm getting sicker and sicker the longer I'm down here. The heat is so hot that, and having a muscle disease too. I have a rare muscle disease that doesn't have a cure or a treatment for it. I never had any problem with it down there, but I had that, I had the situation going on, and so I've had to deal with that coming back here. So having medical conditions is, I just got to roll with what I got and just try to. But it was really hard when I was on the streets. It's just
yeah. So your dad came, brought you back up to Washington.
And
then what happened?
When I came back, I went into within a month of being back in Washington, I went into treatment at St. Peter's Hospital, and
were you able
since
to
I've
get
come
in
out of
right
that,
away?
everything's over.
Sorry, David, to interrupt. Were you able to get in right away?
Yeah, I was actually. I was in within 2 weeks from walking in the door. They had a bed. I didn't know they were out of bed. But yeah.
Was it free, or did you have health insurance?
It was what St. Pete, what they'd done when it's a little different now, but they had charity beds. They would let someone come in and have treatment, and it wouldn't cost me.
Awesome.
So I got one of those, not really thinking that it was going to be available, and so that's the one going to treatment there, and then starting going to Celebrate Recovery for well over 5 years now. So that really helped too. So
Yeah. And then, okay, so then were you able to go from there into housing? You mentioned before that you were on a wait list. Right?
Well, I wanted to, I was willing to take just about anything to get back in town and get situated here again. So I took an apartment where didn't know at the time the type of people that were going to be there. Boy, it was filled with sex offenders and drug dealers, basically. Didn't know that when I lived there, and I lived there for 5 years, so I had to deal with all that. Right downtown, block away from the post office. So
While trying
yeah,
to
it was
get recovery.
that was I was still using when I moved in there, but within about a year after moving in there, I'd gone through treatment and have been pretty sober since. So it's it was a stepping stone, and got me to it helped get me to where I am now, and moved once a couple times after that, but, or once after that before I got in here. So
Okay.
that's been beneficial.
And is where you are now, is that Section 8 or is it all totally independent?
Yeah, it's Section 8.
Okay.
So it was nice to have my rent decreased in half.
I'm sorry, David. I didn't mean to interrupt you. What did you say?
I got it.
What's that?
You're all right.
Okay. No, Billy, I was just curious. Are you in Section 8 too?
Section 8 and Albany Partnership are two different things. I am on the wait list for Section 8, but I'm still about 13 months out.
I see.
Because I am a single adult woman with no dependents. So I'm not, and I don't have any health issues anymore per se. So I wouldn't be expedited to the top. So yeah,
Gotcha.
Albany Partnership they are like, they tie into Section 8, but they're different. I was able to get into them quicker.
Is it like a transitional kind of deal, or that they just?
Well, basically it's just it's another list that you have to get on, but the wait list isn't quite as long, and it's for people who work that have money to be able to pay rent. Section 8, because it doesn't give you the break that Section 8 gives you, but it does give you a break, but it's mostly for people that that do work, but they don't have enough to get a big apartment by themselves.
Gotcha. Hey, David,
there is a wait list here. I was on the wait list for a year. It did take me a year. And during that year, I continued to live in recovery houses and strengthen my recovery, and to get a little bit more time in my job behind my belt, so that when I did go to look for a place, I had the same job for over a year, because before I just never had that.
Nice. Recovery houses. That was a good idea. How did you get connected with the recovery houses?
Well, when I first got out of treatment in Elma, they sent me to the Nike Women's House in Aberdeen, Washington. Oh. And that's how I found about Oxford. I got a recovery coach from treatment, and the recovery coach, after you graduated treatment, would check in with you an entire year after. Wow. And although the Nike house was wonderful, I was too close to Olympia, and I knew, and I got that I wanted the dude, and the dude led to the dope. And then I did that for 2 weeks, and then I left the state, because I knew that it would be too hard, because all Olympia was to me was drugs. I never had any kind of clean time or clean life in Olympia.
Right.
So that's all I didn't know how or if I could even ever accomplish that.
Right. Yeah. Was there somebody that helped you get into treatment in the first
the Meg Martin over at Interfaith Work Shelter? I cannot say enough about that lady. She saved my life, literally.
What is it that she did?
Well, when she invited me in, she just for the first time in 18 days since I stepped foot in Olympia, I never felt safe. She made me feel safe. And then when when they caught my boyfriend choking me out, she brought me into the office and she said, we need a safety plan for you right now. And then she kept me safe from him. And then when he beat the crap out of me to where my whole face was, my eyes were shut, I couldn't open them for months. Anyway, the cops came and I didn't want to deal with the cops because I knew what they were going to do. They were going to take me to St. Peter's or Capital Medical, and they were going to dump my ass out at 2 o'clock in the morning back on the streets with somebody trying to kill me. So I said, no, I refused that. I refused them. I said, no. So somebody, one of the street people ran to the shelter and got Meg. Meg came and she scooped me up. She called her friend who was a nurse from Tacoma that came and sat with me overnight because they thought I was concussed on my bed on the floor in that shelter. And she gave me a bed as long as I wanted it, until he got arrested, you know. Then she helped me get into the Cardva domestic violence house. She paid for 3 bus tickets for me to come back home when I clucked them off for treatment. There was a list of things I needed for treatment. She bought them for me twice. I hawked them, bought drugs with them, came back the 3rd time, and she still bought me the stuff I needed and took me to Centralia to detox for 7 days before I can go into treatment. While I was there, she brought me tobacco, anything and everything. After I relapsed and went dragging back in there, I said I was clean when I had, blood dripping off my track marks. She got me cleaned up and on the Greyhound bus back to my family. There's nothing she didn't do for me.
Wow. Wow. And so, some people, they'll talk about like, well, how do you keep doing that when you see like, they'll call it enabling or, and I'm curious what you feel about that, because it seems like, the 3rd time worked or, and helped, you really get on a path to where you're healthier. And, I'm just curious about what you think about that.
I think that I believe in God, and there's a song that said, he would leave the 99 to save the one. And it's like she's seen this, sees these people in and out all day long, and she doesn't she just doesn't give up. It takes a lot for her to give up, and there are success stories, and then there's people that want to come back and donate and help and open up shelters of their own. And she saw something in me. I don't know what. I was mean. I would beat up her guests. I would, I wasn't nice. I really wasn't nice. Yeah. But she refused to give up on me. And she knew months would go by and she wouldn't see me, but I would come dragging in. And whenever I got to that, where I had just this much clarity, I had this much, of time between fixes, I would make it to her every time. I would make it to her, and she'd talk me into spending the night, and she'd feed me and say, just go to bed. You might have to sleep on the floor tonight, but go in there and go to bed, because she knew the next day I would feel okay. But then as soon as I felt okay, I was off and running again. But she just, I don't know, she just didn't give up on me. Yeah. And I'm not the only one.
Yeah. Until you were ready to make a decision where you just said, I'm done with this and I want a different life. Is that, I think I heard that earlier.
Well, yeah, it was the 3rd time around. And she said, yet again, she went and got me the bed at treatment yet again. After flaking it off for 2 times, she bought me everything, and I showed up, and I hadn't slept in days, and I started to get a little bit of sleep, and I woke up and I said, F you, I'm not going. Leave me alone. I'm going to die under the bridge. Leave me alone. And she was just, everybody was dancing around my suitcase trying to get whatever they could of mine in it. And I had a little bit of drugs left, and I went in the bathroom, and she goes, just go to the bathroom really quick and get your composure. And when I went to go to the bathroom, I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in my life, I saw a dead soul. I saw black. I saw a dead person. And I flushed the drugs down the toilet. It was just a tiny bit. And I ran out there and I said, you have 3 seconds to get my shit and me into treatment. 3 seconds. And they did it. And then along the way, she goes, "You want to stop and get cigarettes?" I said, "Are you crazy? If you stop this car, I'm jumping out and I'm going to run like I've never ran before. No, I don't want any cigarettes." She drove me to Centralia like nobody's business. And it took 7 days of detox because I was just so gone. And then Native American that place, Elma, the Northwest Indian Treatment Center, they saved my life. I had no idea. I didn't even know the issues that I had deep down in there, so I just knew that I always wanted to be a mom. That's the only thing I really ever wanted to do. And then I felt like I failed at that. And it wasn't even my fault, but I didn't care if I died. I did not care. But then I did. I must have because I rallied at the very end. I rallied. And mind you, I disappeared that whole 2 years I was in Washington. I disappeared from my family.
Thank you. That was powerful. David, I know you've told me a bit about some relapse stories. I'm curious if any of that rang true for you and if there were particular things that helped you.
Well, there was a time that I had some bad dope when I was in Reading, and I literally thought I was losing my mind and doing really crazy things. They called the ambulance for me, took me to the hospital, and kept me restrained almost the whole time I was there. And while I was up there, almost dying in the hospital, my house got robbed. So I come back home and I had no clothes, no furniture, nothing there. And that was that was when things were starting to turn around. Where I made a conscious decision. I'm leaving. I'm going back home. And once I made that decision, and after I asked my dad more than once, he drove it one day too. He drove from here all the way down to Reading, and it took me 2 days to drive down there. And he made it one trip, loaded up the truck, and went back on the same day. He wasn't waiting for nothing. Yeah. So he got me out of there.
He got you out of there, and then you came back up to Washington, but you were still using a little, right? You hadn't fully made a decision.
For a few months, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I think for about 3 or 4 months, I was playing around, and then my dad caught me high. There used to be something called spice, like synthetic marijuana, and he caught me high at home. I just opened up the door, and he found me high. I was drunk and high, and he said, "You only got one choice here to make," and so I made the right choice, and he's so proud of me for it. So.
Have you ever gone back since then? Relapsed? Or back
No.
on the street since then?
I even quit smoking cigarettes too.
Me too.
About a year after I got my staph infection, I was in the hospital, and I was in CCU, and there were people that I didn't really crave a cigarette when I woke up, and I was in the hospital for another 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks. Still didn't have a craving.
Wow.
And there were people going out for smokes all the time, and I just didn't have. Lord took the desire of that out of my heart, and I don't smoke since.
Practically a blessing in disguise, huh? The
Yeah.
hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And for you, also part of, at least what you told me before on another day was there was a faith component to your story in making your change as well. We heard just Nobly reference that too. Is that right, David?
What was that?
There was a faith component to your, right? There was part of your making decision was like a kind of, not that I think that's necessary. I'm just curious because it was, nobody mentioned it, and I remembered you saying something to me about that too.
Yeah, it was. I've always believed in Jesus Christ, but I've been bad at staying among your church. And so I, much to my dad's disappointment, I'm sure, I tried going to church at a Catholic church, and it just wasn't making it for me. I needed something that had a little more life to it.
Mm.
And so I started going to my own church, and changed church several times, but where I'm at now, they've been around since '65, so it's a well-established church. It's really good house of God. So
Does it feel like feels like a good home to you?
yeah, and that's why that is what has helped me to stay off alcohol and drugs is going to church and immersing myself in something that I've been gifted to do, which is operating soundboard and during worship service. So
cool, nice.
And about Sunday I get to go do that again. So there's another something that brings me joy. So
yeah,
so I get to go and play.
That's awesome. So you get to do things you like. You have a good community in your church. Looks like you got a good place to stay that's reliable. Anything else that's sustaining you?
It's gotten pretty flexible. Probably the only thing that's sustaining me is my medical problems that refuse to go away.
Ongoing challenge, huh?
Ongoing, it's from one thing to the other. I've been sick my whole life like that. So it's just people who've never been sick don't understand what a lot of people have to go through. And I've never had cancer, but I have cancer in my family certainly. But I've had almost died from a staph infection. Fought it for 5 years and just received the lowest numbers in 5 years from my doctor of how well it's going. So it's not gone, but it's the numbers are so down there so far. I don't think it can get much lower. So yeah. So to answer your question, things are a lot more stable now, and I have family support in church I go to that well received, and so yeah, it's been the reason why I've succeeded is I got help. I asked for help and I got help, and that's where things are at right now.
Beautiful.
Not perfect.
Well, I am noticing we're 5 minutes over the time I promised y'all that we would be together, but I would also like to take this opportunity to offer you both the opportunity. I mean, there's so much more that we can say. Is there anything that you want to kind of reinforce that you've already said, or is there something you haven't had the chance to say yet that you really want the work group to understand about your situation? We'll start with you, David, and then Nobly will give you opportunity.
Well, my biggest concern when I came into this was just I drive up and down Sleeter Kinney Road every day, and I witnessed the homeless encampment on top of that overpass go from being just a couple people to probably 40 or 50 people in that small little section on top of that overpass. I was worried about someone walking out on Sleeter Kinney and getting hit and killed. There's no sidewalk there, and it's not meant for people to be out there. And I was worried about them getting hit and getting hurt and possibly killed. And that's how I phoned in. I was phoning in my concern, and it wasn't noticeable when it started out. Now you can't miss it when you go over that overpass. We're in a time right now where you just can't shut things down. Not during a pandemic. So yeah, that's the initial thing that brought me on board. I was really concerned about safety, because I stayed under bridges and stayed under I-5 Bridge on Cherry Street in Seattle, and that's pretty noisy up there.
Yeah, I know that spot. Yeah.
So I've been I've been in a lot of different places, but not more stable than it is right now. The love of family goes a long ways.
Well,
I'm very grateful.
You look well, and I mean, I know you've got a lot of physical issues, but your eyes look bright, and It's great, and glad you're here and glad you reached out. Really
Yeah.
grateful, and hope you'll be able, as a member of the Lacey community, to continue working with the work group going forward. So thank you. So Nova Lee, same to you. Anything you want to emphasize, or anything you want to share that you
Yeah.
haven't been able to share that you believe will be helpful for the work group to know?
Sure. So 4.5 years ago, I lived under the bridge in Olympia, Washington. Today, I have 4 years clean and sober. I sponsor women. I am in recovery in remission from cancer. I am going to start college in September to be a sleep study technician. I get my driver's license back March 21st, and I just bought my first car. It can be done. And that people need to know that we're not looking for a handout, we're looking for a hand up. And the women that you see on the street, there's somebody's mothers, and there's somebody's fathers, and there's somebody's brothers, and there's somebody's sisters. So don't just disregard them, give them a chance.
Thank you so much.
And in all reality, when the pandemic is over and people's rents aren't going to be paid anymore, there's going to be a lot more people on the streets. So if people need to come together and do what they can do now to prevent that from happening, so that we can make this go away instead of making it worse. And that's why I participated in this program today.
I'm so
You should see it
grateful.
out in Lacey now. It's really, it's so bad. And when I moved to Lacey a couple of years ago, it wasn't this bad. And it's so bad now. They're everywhere. And it's just, you don't have a shelter in Lacey.
Right.
There's no
And
shelter in Lacey.
I love Thurston County for all they did for me. I was just a thorn in their side, really. I wasn't contributing anything but bad. I was littering up their woods. I was whatever, but it was some of the people and some of the organizations there, like Sidewalk, like Cardfa, like the shelter, like St. Vinny's, the people that when you are on the streets that really kept you alive. And those places help when you're on the streets. And for those places, I'm grateful.
Yeah, that's a rough trail too. On Martin Way. That trail out through there. I went to an AA meeting at the college, and I went there and had to walk through that trail. I didn't know anything was back there.
My favorite
they were
spot was behind the
everywhere.
VFW. Behind the VFW up in there, that was my zone. I loved it up in there.
Why is that?
Like the swamp.
Yeah, because could you be private up there? Is that what that was?
Well, there was just a few set of us, and we were known that was our zone, and so I mean, we still got our stuff stolen in there, but it just, and besides, we actually dug a hole and put our tent underground.
Oh wow.
Oh, do you really? Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. But anyway, we were literally underground, and our tent was camouflaged, so you really weren't gonna
I
find
know
us.
you were there.
Yeah, we were, but it was weird and scary when you'd wake up after being on one and you're like underground.
Yeah, I bet.
That'd be a trip.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you both. I'm going to stop recording now, but I have just a couple other wrap up things after I stop recording, but just publicly, since it's a recording, just thank you, deep gratitude to you both, and I'm really glad you're both here. So
Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you so much for doing this for the cause, and just for including us in this as success stories for homelessness.
Oh, absolutely. All right. Stop.